Let me do this quickly because I know people are in a hurry. But before I discuss what we did in our group, I just want to thank the group because there's so much good energy in them. I don't know if we came out with anything productive. Actually, I'm sure we did. But a lot of good intention and good energies and good synergies going on. So we'll share with you what we did. Okay, we looked at the idea of the European Cultural Commons. Is this a good idea? So we have a couple of statements that we could agree on. We couldn't agree with too much, but a couple of statements. Everyone in Europe owns their own culture, and the cultural commons gives it back to them, and therefore stimulates ongoing cultural dialogue. I think it's so clear and so succinct, we don't really need to say any more. Okay, this is not so clear. Bear with me. There's a variety of commons. In other words, we don't have one group, one constituent here. And there's a need to clarify which commons for which community can we most usefully focus on. And looking at every different user needs to recognize the relevant signposts. So this has to be very clear, again, for the different constituents. So we, the professionals, that's us, folks, okay? We need a space. This is the solution or recommendation in which to exchange ideas, share tools, resources, recommendations, standards, and best practice. And we envision this as a virtual place, like a wiki, or virtual meetings, or virtual conferences, or synchronous or asynchronous meeting places, where we can actively develop these things together in collaboration. So this is a very vibrant kind of network of professionals that are getting together, thinking together, and learning from one another. So then we tried to define some barriers. Barrier and solution. Number one. So there's such an amount of raw stuff, and there's no sense of the relative importance. There's no hierarchy. Everything's like flat in Europeana, well, in European, all the different portals. So the idea of producing some sort of best practice and editorial, curatorial input to the content in order to spotlight the content, bring things up, bubble things up, the pearls of different collections, which could be done by experts or by crowd curating, crowdsourcing. And one suggestion would be to create a community of Europeanans, people who are professional experts, not necessarily experts from museums and libraries and archives, but people who volunteer their time, who declare themselves an expert and prepare to share their expertise with others online. Okay, another barrier, content providers fear a loss of control and unfettered reuse of their content. And the solution? Get used to it. That's it. We couldn't think of a better solution, but that's the point. But basically knowing that content can be enriched by others as it kind of moves through the space, and therefore oils the machinery of creative industries, which is a goal that we all kind of agree to. And the third barrier and solution, we had 3 groups. Don't worry, that's the end. End users are not yet central to the discussion of the cultural commons. This is something that we saw in the Renaissance report. The term user is used in many different ways. It's sometimes end user, sometimes it means content provider. There's a lot of kind of confusion there. So we would suggest in our solution to set up strategies to align the products and services with the end user needs. And to do so, we must pool our own resources and work collaboratively. That was it. Okay.
Hi, we were the legal workshop, and we sort of came up actually with 16 key points, and we managed to drill them down to 4 key points. So our first key point in terms of the legal issues associated with achieving a European commons is that we believe that there's a fundamental lack of knowledge and that people don't actually, it's beyond just awareness, they just don't have the information about, or the evidence about the value of being part of the commons. And we feel that our recommendation, our strong recommendation, would be the development of this clear evidence base, possibly through case studies, best practice case studies, to show exemplars of best practice, organizations who are part of the commons, who have successfully dealt with some of the legal and licensing issues that might arise. Our second recommendation relates to the lack of harmonization across Europe in terms of the legislative framework. And I know that there's a lot of work going on this area. There's, for example, a draft Orphan Works Directive, but we feel that there needs to be even greater collaboration to try and ensure even more harmonisation between different states in Europe, to ensure that on a very baseline level, we have the legislative framework to enable us to engage in the cultural commons, but also to collectively use the sorts of content that are out there under a shared framework.
Hello. The other key thing that came out of all of our groups was a need to raise educational awareness. And that was for not only content owners, but content users, rights holders, and aggregators. A critical thing that we acknowledged was that there can be barriers within institutions simply through lack of education, and that staff can often be barriers to each other, so in different departments. So generally, much more educational training and awareness raising. And we realized it was something that we touched on earlier today in discussion, is that all of us, different nations, are at very different stages, and this is most intensely felt in post-war, states that are immediately post-war, or states that are, coming into the EU, or that are immediately outside of the EU, and that we need to have a greater harmonization with that. We need to encourage training. That we need a clear licensing act, and we need greater inclusion in the discussion of those nations, but also that we need to heighten our awareness of the issues that are relating to them. So although it might seem on the one hand that even if you're a nation state that has existed for a long, long time and you have fantastic laws relating to libraries and library use and copyright, and for new nations, the difficulty for them is actually all of those things that they don't have. So sometimes they don't have any copyright laws, they don't have any laws relating to legal deposit. So that was a really critical issue. And more broadly, last night at the dinner, I was incredibly moved to hear from the director of the Polish National Library that during the war, 70% of the Polish National Archives were destroyed, and that only 2,000 of their manuscripts survived. That chimed very much with the situation in Ireland, in a post-independent state where much was lost in war. But it really is an idea that we have much to learn from each other historically of how to rebuild and how to really engage through discussion for greater education and training and dialogue.
In the sustainability group, I'm going to very loosely interpret what happened there. I think there was acknowledgement that there's a big value in the commons, in the idea of a commons, because on the cost side we would be able to reduce costs by sharing resources together. And on the benefit side, equally, sharing resources and getting these best practices and examples up would enable us to show the relevance to all the stakeholders and the financiers of this endeavor. So I think the main thing that came out of it is that by the idea of the commons, a shared infrastructure would be beneficial. Whoops, there you go. Okay, but we would need to load it, the value propositions, really with the ingredients necessary for a commons. So it's about the reusability, it should be free, findable, etc. The 12 points that we heard before, 13 rather. On the recommendation side, here we go. Again, so it was about creating economies of scale. There was an idea for a shared infrastructure, particularly if you think about preservation. We've seen that before in the Comité des Sages report, but it could also be a shared resource like a UGC platform or an apps platform. I think that's a very valuable idea. A creation of a marketplace of knowledge. I think in Susan's group that was also, that came up. It's about being much more sharing, not only sharing ideas, but really sharing the people who have the ideas and the expertise across the network much better would enable us to do things better and cheaper. It was also emphasize that this commons would only work with Europeana maybe as a facilitator if we look at this as an ecosystem where each cell has its own particular role and responsibility. And the commons would only work if we would be able to clearly define that and also showcase that to the financiers again. So it's not only about sustainability of Europeana, but it's about sustainability of the larger network. And the last thing was just, I think, a general recommendation on, if you want to do anything well, think big, start small, act fast. To me, that's exemplified best in the Great War Archive initiatives. It's in the hackathons, where you invite people to do something very concrete with some concrete results. Do it fast, do it in 2 days, and then create a multiplier effect through the network. So making sure that the best practices, again, get filtered down into the ecosystem. That's it. Jill?
Where's the thing? Thank you. This is what, very quickly, possibly, if I point it in the right direction, those were the things that we came to. We believe that the Commons is about awareness, sharing, collaboration, education, trust. It's local, national, European, global. It isn't any one of those things, it's all of them. That it is a driving force that benefits from a convener, but that convener is not the owner. That it should make it easier for others to do what they want to do. That everyone is a creator and a consumer, and that it is a space that allows exchange of ideas and tools and resources. That the Commons makes us greater than the sum of our parts. And the issues that we need to solve came under these kind of headings, and the recommendations were to promote European cultural commons, to work on creating agreed ways to measure return on investment, to showcase more results of being open, so the engagement will be used, the hackathons, European 1914, 1918, to be more active in facilitating the marketplace, the infrastructure, etc. for UGC, that legal matters are essential. So that we need education and awareness towards the 4 stakeholder groups that were identified, that we need to involve the former Eastern European countries to learn from them, but also to help them make use of the existing frameworks, that an evidence base is needed, greater harmonisation is needed. Going backwards, that's not very sensible. And then lastly, I managed to miss off Harry's, sorry, but you remember those. They create a community of Europeanians, even I can't say that, accept the need to lose control, strategies to align with user needs and to work collaboratively. So next, what happens next? Next, we need to create a summary of the recommendations and the issues. So everything that you wrote down, I will make sure ends up in a decent summary. We will circulate that to this whole group for comments, and then we will publish it, because I want to take it forward into the Danish presidency, so that the things that we need to work on, we will start to work on and continue to work on. We've done quite a lot between us over the years. We will then review it, revisit it, see what needs to happen next under the Danish presidency. So I hope to see you all there, if not beforehand.